This is a personal story I, myself, had witnessed. You are free to believe what you like, but I will be telling the story of a three-dimensional shadow that I had witnessed in 2013. I hope you enjoy. In Central Texas, I had just finished my freshman year of college as an aerospace engineering student. With a desire not to go home to arguing parents, I decided to become a camp counselor at a Christian encampment a few hours away for about 11 weeks. Located up in the hill country, this particular encampment was far from civilization, about 20 minutes around curving roads and countless trees to a small town. Like most camps, there were urban legends and myths about the various spots and locations mysterious events occurred. Of course, the management repeatedly denied these claims, despite the ever-growing amount of stories. Or maybe we were just collectively crazy. For example, there was a story flying around about the counselors of a specific cabin known as Cabin 8. From the outside, there was nothing notable about one of the 5 cabins in a semicircle, aside from the fact that it was surrounded by woods to the sides and back. If anything, people wanted that cabin, as it was one of the few with a window unit for the summer Texas heat. But one of the returning counselors had a story he felt reluctant to share. During the year prior to my arrival, he was sharing a cabin with another counselor during an all-boys week. The guy telling the story, let's call him Jake, was a large guy, about 6'3" and pushing 190 pounds if I had to hazard a guess. His co-counselor was far bigger, around 6'1", but easily 250. During the week, the two guys had noticed one of their 8 kids acting strange. It was a hot day, as is the norm, but he got up in the middle of the night and began to scream in the middle of the room, shrieking for no absolute reason. Getting up, Jake had tried to get to the kid, asking what's wrong and trying to get some sort of answer out of this behavior he was not warned about. Night terrors and sleeplessness was fairly common, so it was standard practice to just let it ride out. After 10 minutes, though, the ride did not look like it was going to end anytime soon. As Jake nudged the kid on the shoulder to see if he would respond, the kid immediately shoved back, knocking Jake over. As he tried to get up, the kid began to wail on Jake, hitting him over and over, giving him a black eye. The co-counselor finally got out of bed and tried to restrain the kid. A 250-pound guy should have no problem against a 4-foot-something kid, right? Reportedly, this kid fought him off, lifting Jake at one time and throwing him against the bunk. As they continued to try and restrain the boy, he escaped their grasp and ran out into the woods, still screaming all the while. A search order was issued, and they found the kid near the lake asleep. When asked, he claimed to have not remembered a thing and was concerned with waking up in the middle of the woods. The parents blamed the counselors, accusing them of spiking his drink or something of that kind. Of course, Cabin 8 had other stories. An ex-girlfriend of mine woke up one night to find everything levitating in the room. Others say they woke up to find scratch marks along their backs. This was a common occurrence. And here's where I come in. I was having a nice dinner, probably dinosaur nuggets or something, when one of the other counselors, one who had been there frequently, came up to me. People respected this man. He was around 24 at the time, a theology student, and was well-knowledged in extra-biblical sources as well as the occult. He claimed it was for self-defense. Regardless, he approached me and said that I had exhibited some solid faith and asked if I could join him for a prayer circle out by the lake. With nothing else to do, I went along with it. As we trekked through the woods to the lake, he had brought along another counselor, one who I would say was even more spiritual than me, and began to say that a 3-dimensional shadow was reported to have been seen speaking to one of the kids there that week. Having heard of these 3D shadows from the stories around camp, I knew they very well could be demons, my only reason to believe in such a thing. As we arrived, nothing could be found. We ran the ceremony, asking for whatever evils were present to be driven away. It was a simple exorcism, no candles, no Latin chanting, no projectile vomit. Opening my eyes, still nothing to be found, much to my disappointment. I expressed this to the other two, and they themselves were grateful that we ran into nothing. but I still held on to my disappointment. After a few weeks, I was up on rotation to be a counselor, and bonus points, it was at the quote-unquote haunted Cabin 8. Another all-boys week. I had my co-counselor as well, and overall it was a good time. Aside from one moment. One night, the boys and I were settling in for the evening. Everyone had showered and gotten to their bunks, but still had the light on to chat. These kids were around the 3rd grade or so. Given that it was a Christian summer camp, the topic naturally drifted to the Bible, most notably the book of Revelations. To keep it short, it's a book about trials and tribulations, but with God coming through in the end, saving the world. It's a book about hope and is the final book of the Bible. As I explained this, one of the kids sat in the bunk cat-a-cornered me and began repeating the word no over and over. No, 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 no. He would continue. As I approached the kid, I asked him, what's wrong? It's about how everything we go through, God still wins in the end and brings people to a life beyond what they can imagine. But he would repeat, no, 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 not responding to anything I've said to him. A weird moment for sure, but one that ended as we turned off the lights and hit the hay. The rest of the week went off without a hitch. The kids went home and had a week of adventure, and my co-counselor and I were left to spend the remaining half of a Sunday as we liked. Being the lazy guy I am, I kept my sleeping stuff in Cabin 8, not having moved it all back to the male counselor's sleeping hall like my co-counselor did. And why wouldn't I? It had air conditioning, and I would have to move all my stuff across camp to the male dorm. So I spent the night in Cabin 8, alone. Turning off the lights, I crawled into bed and got on the upper bunk near the door. On one side of the room, there was a singular window with a bunk bed long ways against it. Most interestingly, that's where the child repeating, no, 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 slept. As I crawled in the bed, I adjusted myself, trying to find a good spot on the hard bunk. Unable to find somewhere comfortable, I began to sit up, and that's when I saw it. Hunched over, sitting off the bed, back to the window, a 3-dimensional shadow sat in plain view. It appeared to have striations, and with the light filtering in behind it, it certainly passed through. Laying next to the door, I would have plainly heard someone coming into a nondescript cabin in the middle of the night on a remote encampment miles away from civilization to which I had just turned the lights off a few minutes prior. Seeing this, I quickly threw myself back and began to pray loudly. Nothing root and routine like the Lord's Prayer as you hear, just a really loud conversation with a plain white ceiling above. As I continued to pray loudly, I glanced over at the figure who appeared to have noticed me. Still in its thinking pose, only its face was directed at me. Easily the most terror I have ever felt. My prayers became louder, nearly a shout as I began to bargain with God to keep up his end of the deal and not letting challenges be too great for what we can handle. In short, I did not want that thing speaking to me. Both the sweating and prayers continued, trying to avoid the sight of the figure as much as I could. By then, I was already in the middle of some sweet hymns, Johnny Cash style, as I couldn't try singing with a dry throat. But, in retrospect, it might have scared it away sooner. After what felt like an hour, which was in actuality around 20 minutes with it, I glanced one last time over to find the bunk empty. Taking my chance, I leaped out of bed, turned the lights on, and repeatedly made the claim that I was never afraid, that I won, and that I'm only leaving because I forgot the extra pillow I needed back at the male counselor's dorms. That figure could be seen in my dreams for the next few years, reminding myself of the pure terror that I have thankfully not felt since. And there we go. And that'll about do it, guys. I really wanted to put this out there to see if anybody else had a similar experience. A few other people I whipped this story out on say they've also seen what is constantly described as 3-dimensional shadows. So if you've seen something like this, please let me know in the comments down below. It'll help me feel less like a crazy person. And with that, I'll be back with some similar stories soon. Thanks for watching.